since CBN, CBG, Delta 8, Delta 10, et cetera, are not improved in an FDA-approved drug, would they still face the same marketing and banking issues as a CBD product? Or is there a possible route as a new dietary ingredient or food ingredient, which might open them up to less restrictions?
You've got a smart audience, Matt. Nice. These are great questions. Fantastic. And each of these questions, at least the last couple that we've received, I think could be the topic of an entire podcast on their own. These are good questions. So the question is, these non-CBD cannabinoids, CBG is probably the perfect example, that are not the subject of clinical trials by the FDA. Are they subject to the same restrictions that CBD is? And that requires us to really quickly summarize why the FDA restricts CBD. So in the U.S., if a compound has been the subject of clinical trials and it wasn't previously marketed in food or as a dietary supplement prior to those clinical trials, well, then it can't later be approved as a food or dietary supplement. Again, I'm just summarizing at the highest level here. And CBD was the subject of the Epidiolex test trials, which was later approved as a drug. And then all the evidence seems to show, unfortunately, that CBD itself was not marketed prior to those test trials. There's a lot of dispute about that and debate about it, and I get it, and I would love to find the smoking gun to show that it was. I haven't found it yet. Hemp extract was, that's a whole nother issue. So Epidiolex was approved. It was a subject of clinical trials, and because the FDA says CBD cannot be marketed as a dietary supplement or used as a food ingredient. CBG has not. CBN is not, and all these other cannabinoids have not. So they are not subject to the drug exclusionary rule, which is what I was just talking about. By the same token, it doesn't mean that you can just put it out there and make a bunch of claims about it. The FDA will still come in and say, you can't just start making, we're going to treat it like a drug if you're making medical claims and it's not an approved drug. The FTC is the same way. You can't just say, well, CBG, cures baldness, cancer, and Alzheimer's. If the FTC is going to say, where's your evidence for that? And if you don't have really good, substantial evidence, then you're going to get fined there as well. So what I advise clients in this situation is that, sure, working with these cannabinoids in a lot of ways, there's less regulation, less prohibition on it. But by and large, you should be thinking in terms of the same rules kind of apply. You don't want to be making claims. As far as banking and things like that, banking is open to hemp and cannabinoids and whatnot that come from hemp and companies involved in the hemp space. The real issue with banking is that banks are by and large very conservative institutions, and hemp is new and it's risky. There's gray areas, and so it's really about individual banks saying, well, we're just not ready for that yet, or if we do already, we're going to have a very tight parameters. So if there are a handful of banks, I'm happy to talk with people about the banks that I recommend.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to educate the bank. Like, I just got a new account at US Bank, and they wouldn't give it to me at first because I told them, I was honest, like, I'm a consultant in the CBD space, and they're like, oh, we can't work with you. And I was like, let me talk to the manager. And I just educated the guy, and he was like, no, okay, you're not touching product. I was like, I'm not touching the product, dude. I'm just consultant. But yeah, so certain banks are friendlier than others for sure. And you want to make sure you're with the right bank, because it's a hassle when you get shut down and you got to find a new bank and they send you your money back and all that. I've had that happen.
Oh man, that's terrible, right? And then what do you do if they send you your money back and if you don't have a second bank and you go and you've got your check, sure, you've got your money, but you don't have anywhere to put it or cash it. So I often tell clients to have a backup bank as well. Yeah. So if you're one bank, a lot of times banks will say, oh, we're going to be involved in the CBD industry, and they make a big push and they onboard a bunch of clients, and then they get cold feet and they say never mind, and so it's really difficult. The processing space is the same way. Merchant processing is
I was just going to say that.
Pain. Gosh, and so I've definitely seen merchant processors come in with a big bang and a big flurry of activity, and then they're out. And so be real careful and have backup merchant processors as well.
I always say that to have 2 bank accounts and 2 merchant accounts at least. At least.
Sure.